issues. So friends, as you know that NAREDCO has been having regularly, we had over a dozen such realty bridge events during the current year. And these bridges are only basically meant to connect you with the leaders. Today, as you all know, we have Sanjay with us, who's indeed a very inspirational and successful leader. I uh, the less said about him is better, but I must tell you that he believes, firmly believes, that joy and accomplishment is what drives him. Okay, I've known him since last over 2 decades, when he was in Cushman and then JLL, prior to that CBRE, and I've always seen that he's one who's very, very positive, and he looks at the upside from the downside, and he knows that there is always a brighter side on the other side of the tunnel. This is what he believes. He also, friends, knows that you have to act. He's a man of action, and today, we are fortunate that he is leading such a, one of the leading organizations of the country. Okay, he doesn't believe in thinking; he believes in actually acting. I have a few questions for him, which I would like him to, share with us, for the benefit of all of you. But before that, I want to say one more thing about him, is that he's got a very soft heart. When he was studying, I remember that he shared with us that he went to HelpAge India, and there he contributed his artwork. Okay, so the institution, when the person there in charge asked him that, why, you're too young to contribute such stuff. The only thing that I would want you to do is to take care of your parents. And this is one quality which really touched me a lot. He is a true son of his parents. He is a Shravan Kumar for us. And Sanjay, really, I'm very happy to be associated with you, and even more happier that you are going to lead NAREDCO in the next couple of years. So Sanjay, my question to you is about what is it that you will never ever negotiate in life? What are the 2 or 3 things you feel that you will never negotiate, whatever happens?
Thank you so much, Ashok ji, and I would like to greet everybody with very warm welcome. Extremely grateful for NAREDCO to organize this for me. I would take 1 or 2 minutes just to extend my thanks to Rajan and you and all the leadership of NAREDCO, because I believe whatever I'm going to share or whatever I'm going to say about life and inspiration, it's nothing but a summary of what I've learned from all of you. So you all have inspired me, as many other leaders that I've worked with in the past, and also includes, like you very rightly said, the foundation of us is actually parenting and the immediate family. And how much of that you hold in life to benefit from it depends on you. So I'm eternally grateful for all of this. To answer your question, I believe something that I would never like to or never negotiate is happiness. I would never ever compromise, not only mine, I would say anybody's. Being part of the corporate world, we have gone through so much of downside of the real estate sector. And of course, we have seen the upside and the downside, but there are always challenges facing us, confronting us. And I realized very early in life, which it's very interesting, observation which I took about 30 years ago. When I decided to pursue my management program, I chose marketing and HR. And I'll tell you why I chose marketing and HR. Normally, at that time, people would choose marketing and finance. I realized that if I want to be in the services sector and I want to service people, I should know people. I didn't do HR program to become an HR professional. I became HR professional to connect with people, because real estate, Ashokji, we often say is all about location, location, location. I have repeated myself in many such programs, and I said it's all about people, people, and people. So when you uh, align so much and give so much to the relationships that we knit together, uh, we engage with the government, and Rajanji spoke about it. Niranjanji often speaks about it. At the end of that discussion or the other side of the table, there are people sitting with whom we are talking, right? So early in my professional life, I realized that if we can take care of happiness and we make that absolutely a non-negotiable, everything else will fall in place. I have over 30 years discovered that the most enrichment in professional life that I've got is from these deep relationships. People who worked with me 30 years ago are in touch with me today. I know the driver's name of Cushman and Wakefield, JLL, CBRE, Shashikant More, Munaf, Sushil Kumar from 30 years ago. And I exchange WhatsApp messages with those people as much as I would give and respect the people. So status or class is all immaterial. It's the joy and happiness that you get. And I would always keep that as non-negotiable.
Thank you, Sanjay. I mean, can I take the liberty of one more question, Vishal?
It'd be my pleasure.
Yeah. So, Sanjay, I mean, we know about you being a boss, but what kind of a boss are you? I mean, do people? I mean, are they scared to come to you? What do you believe in? What do you feel about leadership, and especially about level 5 leaders? What do you feel about them?
I firmly believe lead by example, and I'm not because sometimes you read these massive books and take inspiration, and all of them are inspiring in their own ways. I believe what India has gone through last 30 years has never been done before. Whatever you look at it, I mean, from the time when I started my professional life, real estate was not even a subject to pursue. But I took the leap of faith to join real estate sector as a professional. Uh, so when you demand as a boss from somebody to perform, often the management style is that you delegate, and there is nothing wrong with delegation. If you have hired a vice president and you're giving that person a fancy salary, the obvious question that comes to your mind is, Kaam karne do, let him prove himself. I believe as a leader, irrespective of the designation, even at the lowest level, if you can handhold the person for a short period of time, just to enable and ensure that that person is successful and not leave it to him to become a success. It is imperative and important that you do that, because it is only when you actually do that you inculcate a culture of collaboration, inculcate a culture of camaraderie, inculcate a culture of team spirit, inculcate a culture of fighting the challenges together. And that is far more important than the job itself. Because if you have achieved a sense of belonging, and if you have achieved a sense of togetherness, a sense that you have with your parents and children, that deep connect which overrides any challenge of life. They accept you the way you are, right? Imagine if you have that kind of bond with every colleague of yours in the organization. So it is not about money, it is not about designation, it is not about what you expect them to do, but they are just an extended and you know, we often use these jargons, but leave the jargons aside. You need to demonstrate first. We can use various messages. The, you know, the leadership comes from the top. Unless I demonstrate, how can I expect others to demonstrate to us? So the kind of boss that I am is, they don't feel only the boss. So I don't think I'm a boss. I'm a colleague. I think the position of being a boss is to be earned. I cannot call myself an MD and a boss if I have not earned it. If people believe I'm the boss, that I have led them to success and I have led them to performance, I consider I'm the boss. Otherwise, I'm not.
Wonderful, wonderful. Sanjay,
So,
completely agree
Ashok,
with you that people do and do not see with their eyes, but they see with with their actions. Thank you, Sanjay, for enlightening everybody here. Yeah, Rajan bhai.
Ashok, I think Tara ma'am is already there. So I request Tara ma'am to, before you came, I told the people on the webinar that we are starting a women's wing, Mahi. So I haven't told them because we were not there at that time. Tara ma'am is going to take over as first president of Mahi. So
Congratulations, sir.
Thank you,
yeah.
Sanjay. Thank
Yeah.
you.
So Tara ma'am, you can tell people a little bit about Mahi, because I told one thing. I given you people a big responsibility, because we are not disciplined and we are not respected. So you have to bring a lady luck, and both the things you have to get it for the industry.
Right.
Over
Actually,
to you.
before I start, I really need to thank everybody in NarrateCo for placing their trust in my weak shoulders for such an important position. I'm being honest with you, when Preeti Singh approached me and said that they're going to start a ladies' wing in NarrateCo, my first reaction was, no, this is not for me, because I thought this was something like a first wives club. Then when I thought about it, I checked out with Preeti and Rajan, and they both told me that what we are going to do in Mahi, we've called it Mahi, the reason is something else. I won't go into that now. We are going to have a platform where women in this really male-dominated industry, both finance and developer community, real estate and allied products, don't get an opportunity. They don't have a window to go to anybody. They don't know where to go. So we are going to be helping women realize their dreams. We want to be the wings beneath their wing. Sanjay, you talked about position not being important, and I couldn't agree with you more. In fact, one of the closest relationships that I've had are with all the peons and the drivers of HDFC. Just to tell you guys, I have to tell you something. When my daughter got married, I had a reception where obviously all the developer fraternity, my friends, my colleagues, my bosses from HDFC was there. I realized that the people who really knew my daughter and saw her grow up were the peons and the drivers of HDFC, because I joined HDFC when she was barely 4.5, and she used to come and hang around my office on Saturdays. So I had a special dinner only for, if I can call them, sub-staff, all the peons, the drivers, the security guys, my beauty parlor people with their spouses. And believe me, they are so happy about it, because I feel ultimately you need everybody's blessings. What takes us and makes us success is not just hard work. It has to be lady luck and goodwill of people. You have to be honest, you have to have integrity, but you also need to walk the talk. If you talk about being equal with people, show it to them. I know Sanjay is also a very, very, very popular person in the industry. And I just want all of us to just take this forward. I appeal to all of you to make Mahi a success, because I think with the success of all these lady entrepreneurs is the success of Mahi, which will obviously be the success of Naredco. Naredco is our father, and I just want all your guys blessings and best wishes, please. Thank you.
Best wishes, Tara. Thank you.
Congratulations, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Congratulations, Taraji. Best wishes.
I would now like to take it forward, and I would hand it over to the Jay Mozaria, who is the current Vice President for the Next Gen Maharashtra, who would be taking it further ahead with Mr. Sanjay Dutt. Thank you.
Guys, 1 minute before I close my talk, I just don't want best wishes. I want all of you to promise me that you will be available to me 24 hours, 365 days. The first person outside Naredco who has promised me is Baman Irani. When he got to know through someone else, he called me up and told me that, Tara, I'm there for you 365 days, 24 hours. So I want the same promise from all you guys from Naredco. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, good morning, everyone. Sanjay sir, I would like to ask you, Sanjay sir, you have spent nearly 30 years in real estate, raised and worked in 3 major hubs, that is New Delhi, where you born and brought up, Mumbai, where you are based, and Bangalore. Please share your professional journey and insights with us, sir.
Thank you. My professional journey, if I may say it in least words, started with a question. I, at a very early age, became an entrepreneur, started my summer jobs in a logistics industry. At that time, exports was a big sector, and I became an expert on documentation and cargo handling and logistics. And I started my own company called Fast Forward. It was immediately after graduation. Most of my family were in services, whether armed services or police and public services. So it was the first of a venture. My takeaway at that time was all about challenges that you face in a startup business and the learnings of the sector. When I did my management program, the question I had for my professor, with whom I was deliberating, is what kind of services industry I should work for, because I was very clear on the services sector and told you about, that's why I took up marketing and HR. And I concluded that I want to work in a sector which is most profitable and high margin. And jokingly enough, we agreed that that sector is arms dealing. But obviously, not everybody can do that. The second sector was investment banking. And the third was, management consulting and stroke real estate sector, because at that time, we had the luxury of some very fat margins. So it was very tempting. So that's how my professional journey was deciphered, and I took some bold steps in my career at that time. However, 30 years onwards, I'm cutting the story short, my takeaway is the most high margin that you need in your life as a professional is high margin of satisfaction, high margin of happiness, high margin of well-being, and high margin of being able to be relevant in future. So leave aside the economic gains, leave aside your designation, leave aside the CEO. I never even wanted to be the CEO. I just wanted to be the best professional in the industry. And I say that without any arrogance. I say that whatever I decide to do, I will have to be amongst the best when it comes to fulfilling a promise that I make. That was the goal. And when I discovered, like I mentioned in earlier, Ashok ji's question, the takeaway was the happiness, the joy. So my professional journey is around this. And if you notice, the other decision, when my resume was read out, you must have observed, I chose to work with the top firm. I said, I will make my life very simple. If I want to be the best, I need to be the best amongst the best. You cannot say that you are best without demonstrating success. You cannot be a good professional without demonstrating what good you have delivered. You cannot demonstrate as a leader by not helping the people who work with you as colleagues. So you need to be the best in every aspect of life, in every aspect of business. And therefore, that's the summary of my professional journey. If you notice, I would be the only professional at a leadership level who has worked with the top 3 consulting firms: CBRE, JLL, Cushman. My takeaway today is I still enjoy my deepest relationships with the leaders of those companies. So Anshuman Magazine, who's the chairman for Southeast, Middle East, all the way up to Africa, from Philippines to Africa, is still my friend. So when I chose to leave him and go to Cushman, where Chanakya Chakravarti helped me grow as a professional and he gave me the opportunity, he's still a friend. But I chose to move and leave him and go to JLL with Anuj Puri. I continued to enjoy the relationship with Chan and Sanjay Verma. And when I left JLL and moved back to Cushman, my deep bond with Anuj was not disturbed. It was intact. In fact, it became stronger because as professionals, whether it's Anshuman or Chan or Anuj, and subsequently Capital Land and today Tata, it is not who you work for. It is what you give to those organizations and whether you have earned the deepest respect for making a meaningful contribution to those businesses. And without ill intent, without, we have old values in our system that the organization that you work for, you pay your respect, you make sure that you give your, it's a moral responsibility to give yours to them because they've given you a professional opportunity to grow. So I remain ever so thankful to each of those individuals, as much as I have learned from all the developers in the country. So in a consulting space, my management program in real estate was not the International Management Institute. It was the developer, occupier, and investor fraternity with whom I continue to grow my professional experience. And whatever I am today, it's basically nothing. It's a summation of those experiences as a professional. And I would continue to be on that path of learning and growth. And Tara made a very important point. I do not make distinction between designations. So when I look across the floor in the office, there are no designation. They're individuals. They are colleagues. And while you have system and processes and protocols, which I respect, but I would be diving deep at from 35,000 to 2,000 and working with the professionals, hands-on. Because like the point that I made earlier, is extremely important that you make everybody successful. A leader cannot be successful unless the people under the leader are successful. Actually, the success of the leader depends on the people, whether they are successful or not, right? So I think that's a very important aspect of a professional journey. The 3 regions and the hubs was a conscious decision that I wanted to understand the cultural aspects of real estate. Sitting in Bombay, you cannot know what a Kannada, Tamil, Malay, Shetty wants in those markets. You have to be a part of those cultures and live and breathe in that environment to be able to design a product that they want and service them. And same goes for Maharashtra, and same goes for Delhi. Although I've chosen to be Marathi because that's my home. But as a professional, I'm universal. That's one aspect that I would like to say. The other professional journey I would like to say, which has helped me, is integrity. With my hand on my heart, every real estate that I have purchased without any favors from anybody or discounts. I have bought on the rack rate. Being an industry expert, I can use my connections to economically benefit by getting some discount. Jay, right? Itna to banta hi hai.
100%, sir.
No, I have not. I have served on the board of Suntec, Kamal Khetan, who is a wonderful human being, who gave me the opportunity, and I've learned a lot from him, just as much from some of the other leaders like Satish Magarji in Pune and Atul Chorodia and Panchil, Irfan, Raj, Manoj Minda of RMZ, and Bhaskar Raju of Divyashri, and so many others, Mr. Rajiv Singh of DLF, and Ravi and Neil. I've learned so much from them. But I have not taken. So integrity, it's not that it compromises the integrity, but if you believe inside that you have not compromised your integrity, your standing position in the economic world and the professional world will be at the highest point for you. You're not doing it for others. You're doing it for yourself. Trust. I have never walked into anybody's office with any expectations in return. Even as a consultant, I have first gone into the office with the well-being intention. If you know consulting business, the consulting business is success-based. You get paid. Once you give advice and transaction is completed, you can raise an invoice. My advisory to some of my clients in my journey of 30 years has been not to do the deal, not to do this, not to do that. And I have lost revenue as a consultant. But the purpose was not making money in the first place. The purpose was, can I make a meaningful contribution to somebody's life? If that person is successful and my advisory has enabled him to take informed decision and grow his or her business, I have served. But if I have served, imagine next call when that person makes for the investment or a decision, who do you think that person will call? The person who has delivered a promise, right, with highest integrity and built a bridge of trust. So professional life, integrity, trust, and values, and some of this I will cover in my subsequent discussion also, has been the pillars of my professional journey, Jay, that I've used.
Thank you so much, sir. There's so much to learn from you, sir. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Jay. Now I would like, Ronak to take up the further things, and let's hear more from Sanjay sir on this. Ronak.
Yeah, thank you, Vishal. Good morning, one and all. I would like to welcome each and every one of you for today's webinar. Sir, Sanjay sir, good morning. I would like to request you if you could help us out, and so I have a couple of questions. So
Sure.
in 2021, you have done maximum sales. Can you please help us decode this mantra of yours, please? And secondly, sir, Sanjay sir, what has life taught you during this entire journey? Can you share some of your studies with us, case studies, if you can, please? And
Sure,
third, sir,
Ronak. No, thank you
with
so
your
much.
experience and your
Yeah. No, I've understood,
Yes,
Ronak.
I have-
Both your questions.
yeah,
I
Yes.
think your second question is the answer to your first question, because it's the takeaways of that life which taught me few things that are extremely important for economic performance of a business. And it comes from, it's a culmination of organization values and what the Tata as a group and philosophy and ethos, the work ethics that they inculcate in every leader and a CEO and the people at large. And my personal values, ethos, and the culmination of these two, which have led to a very good 120% achievement of financial performance in the first pandemic year of 2020. So, I have some talking points. I will try and share those with you very quickly. I don't know if you can see my screen.
yes, sir, we can.
Just bear with me. Yeah. So I summarize some of these as few headers. So I'm not going to give any presentation. I'm just going to make sure that these are placeholders for people to focus on what I'm talking about. I believe the lessons of life start from the family values and a summation of what those values stood for and what overall in your professional journey you accomplished. I hope you are not interrupted with anything else. Is the screen clear? Just checking.
Yes, sir. Yes, it's clear, sir.
All right. My parents taught me, and which I mentioned just now, if you're selfless, now it's a very tough one. How can you be selfless when you have certain goals in life? But I have seen that if you are genuinely selfless, you just mean to do well for yourself and well for everybody around you and well for the organization, well for the sector, well for the industry, well for people, it rubs on you. Even if I have faced professional challenges throughout my journey, when people have been hostile to me, people have created roadblocks for me, and I'm not being disturbed. I think they taught me differently. I overcame those challenges. And you know how I overcame those challenges? While I was building my career, I made them successful. And when I say I made them successful, I literally, and I say literally, parted with my bonus checks with them. I gave money and I put money in their pocket, not as a gesture of sympathy, but that they are part of my professional journey and equally deserving of that credit that they have earned. And when I you know, uh, consistently performed my obligation as a manager and as a colleague, the same very people who were creating roadblocks are my friends today. And I was able to overcome those challenges. So that was the value that I got from my parenting by my parents. The point that you see at the bottom is optimism. And I think Ashokji made a point. I believe every pain can give you a gain. Every downside has a potential upside. Are you really conscious and aware of your surroundings? Are you really analytical? Are you really able to decipher the opportunity instead of sulking and worrying about the challenges? If you focus on solution, which I must tell you is the DNA of every developer, the real estate development industry, in my opinion, particularly the developers, face the maximum challenges, whether it is land acquisition and title and litigations, whether it is design and approval and maximizing and waiting for years to get permissions, or during the journey of construction when you go through your ups and downs of regulatory changes, so many ifs and buts, flamingo bird permission, fire lifts required in Thane, RERA coming in, 70% money to be parked in escrow, high-rise committee issues, you name it, everything comes the developer's way. And they demonstrate the biggest quality of success of a successful developer, that they take head on, because they have a belief, that self-belief, that they can eventually overcome and deliver and economically benefit from it, and will be able to build a business. That optimism, if you cultivate, and that optimism, without being excessive optimism, I must warn you, if you are over ambitious and over optimist, you know you're setting your expectations too high, and by not achieving it, the failure will drown you. So too much of optimism is not good. It's a very balanced and mature approach. But if you believe there is an opportunity and you can build your skills and capability, adapt and be an agile leader to navigate through those difficult contours of the business, you will come out well. The third aspect of the family values that I believe are very helpful are the deeds. Do you actually do that or not? And I want to tell you this I was trying to figure out what I'm going to talk, and it was difficult to decipher and say in very least terms. So I summarized in the next slide, which I'm going to take you. I hope you bear with me. So I came out with this simple headline to communicate with you as audience effectively. When you enter the temple, what do? I want to ask a question for the purpose of making this session more engaging. Can anybody just highlight? I don't want to catch you by surprise. Tara, maybe you can come in. Your state of mind is very different when you're in the office, or when you're in a government office, or when you're with a banker, or when you're with a partner. Can you describe state of your mind when you enter the temple? Anybody? Tara, I was looking forward to your contribution if you're around.
I think I just missed the question. Can you just repeat it, Sanjay? Sorry, I do want to
Tara?
reply to you.
Tara, I was suggesting when you enter the temple,
Yeah.
there is a state of mind.
Yes.
You give up certain thoughts and you
Yeah.
devote yourself, right?
Yes.
I just wanted you to tell me what are your state of mind experiences. I'm not suggesting you're going to temple every day or not, but I'm just saying, just visualize and you can share with us what is the state of mind when you enter the temple.
I have always gone to temples and churches when I am in a situation which is way beyond what I can do. Like, I'll give you an example. If there is someone very ill in the house, I go there to pray, not to make the person all right, but to do what is good for that person.
Correct.
And if it is supposing it's going to be very sad, give me and my family the strength to go through with the pain. So there is a certain amount of expectation, of course, complete trust in God, and keeping in mind that there is someone whom I can rely on for peace, happiness, contentment, and strength.
So true. So true, Tara. The purpose was to communicate through this question. How do you achieve 120% of the performance in the organization, overcome the challenges? You suggested you go because you know there is a hope that gets built up. And I believe if you have the same thoughts, same state of mind, same well-meaning thoughts, intent, positive actions, you devote yourself to the challenges, you are well-meaning, you don't mean harm to everybody. Even if there is challenges, even if you are taking some very difficult decisions, tough decisions, impacting people, impacting business, impacting customers, but your intent is positive, your intent is well-being, and you're basically selfless and your approach is goodness. If you have that, I believe the people in the organization take a clue from this and become part of that culture. And this is what I have used. And this combined with Tata Group values. So to share with everybody, we gave away all our bonuses last year. We've ensured that not only financially, all our vendors who are struggling, going through cash flow issues, are made payments on time. If there is a delay, we used to make sure that we go out of the way, correct, run the process faster, and make those payments to the workers, make those payments to the vendors, and deliver everything on time or sometimes even before time. So these values gave us so much of commitment from colleagues, vendors, and partners that we were able to achieve success in a very difficult environment. I hope I've answered this question to you.
So I would also request to ask you another question. So with your experience and your expertise in this industry for the last 30 years, so can you please help us understand the things that you shouldn't do in real estate? A lot of people have come and told us what you should do in real estate, but I would request you to help us understand what you shouldn't do in real estate, keeping into mind about today's scenario and such as demonetization, RERA, GST, and now COVID-19, sir. Please, sir. Thank you.
No, absolutely. It's a very important decision. I'm assuming each one of us have gone through our lessons of life. So please make sure you don't repeat it, right? So if there are mistakes that we all did, the first moral responsibility is that we shouldn't repeat it. The second thing is not compromise your values, not compromise your long-term goal or vision. Because as an entrepreneur, as a developer, as a young businessman and entrepreneur, you have set yourself for certain goals. Now, you can change strategies, and you can adapt to new environment like we are going through digitization, etc., etc. You can make those changes and alterations, but never ever compromise your end goal and objectives simply because you are going through some challenges and you're cutting this short. I'll give you an example. As a developer community, we all know there is a herd mentality. I have seen 5 property cycles in India in all the markets. I have another example that I often use in my webinars, the wise man theory. What is, or the wise woman, you can call it. There are many entrepreneurs, women entrepreneurs in development business. But for the purpose of this discussion, I'm making it simple. The wise man theory. What is the wise man theory? There is a theory in 1995 when property values went up and Nariman Point, Raheja Towers saw transaction at 42,000 rupees per square feet by a leather export garment back then, and the prices crashed. What was the takeaway of that? Excessive speculation. 30 years, 25 years, I want to ask a question to you. The story still remains the same. There is speculative development by developers. There is excessive inventory in residential. There is still a lot of investor and speculation. Do you agree with me or not?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Why? If we have seen herd mentality and if we have seen excessive speculation, why do we continue to do that excessive speculation? By the way, in 2000, we didn't learn a lesson. The wise man theory continues. This time, the dot-com bubble burst happened. We went through a learning curve. Come 2005, foreign direct investment in real estate is given. We got access to all the money. IPOs, AIMS listing. AIMS gave us $3.5 billion of capital raise. IPOs gave another $4 billion. Overall, $27 billion came to India. Still, we took debt, or we took equity as debt. We structured that as a debt because we like debt. And the reason we like debt because we believe we don't have to return the debt. You know, we can do a settlement subsequently. We didn't learn our lessons. Every developer became shopping center developer, residential developer, office developer, hotel developer, and pan-India developer. And they also wanted to go to Malaysia and Dubai and become global developer. We didn't learn our lessons. When we decided, when the global financial crisis happened, the developers learned that it's not easy to do business in Chennai and there and everywhere, and you can't be spread out. We didn't learn our lessons. We came back to our home markets. What did we do? We bought land from high cost of debt from NBFCs. Speculative developments. We didn't learn a lesson. So the wise men, so the point I'm making is at every cycle of property, we think we have become wiser. But the history shows that we have not become wiser. We have only learned the lesson of what we did wrong at that time, but we failed fundamentally of what can go wrong in future. So the problems were different each time. So we should not do that. We should build expertise in residential if that is your core business. We should build expertise in office if that is your core business. If we should build expertise in data centers if that is your core business, but not give up, not shift and see which is doing better. It's like catching a train which may reach the station early. How about catching a train where you get a seat, you are in no rush, and you arrive in good shape when you land at the station? That is what I'm trying to say. I think that is the key. what you should not do in real estate business. By the way, it doesn't mean that you can't be a pan-India developer, but have a approach. I think we failed to build professional institutions as developers. We should have invested in talent. We should have grown that talent. We should have built leadership. And we should limit our involvement as a developer or promoter to strategic decisions, not to macro decisions. There is no need for you to sit down to negotiate a lease or a sale of an apartment. Let the marketing manager do it. It's not your job. You need to ensure that they do it on time, sell on time, they adapt digitization, they adapt technology tools, etc., and you ensure that that gets done timely. So I think these are the takeaways of young entrepreneurs and developers who are part of this audience today as key takeaways. The other quick point I would like to make is, when you think about strategic decisions, think, are they transformational in outcome? I've spoken enough about building a high performance culture in the organization. You reward people. If you have an above average individual, make sure that above average, he or she gets rewarded, recognized higher than the average. And then the third bullet, which I've kept all my life, is the rule of 120. I may not be successful every time of achieving 120% of my target or goal, but my DNA approach is that if my boss has given me, if my board has given me a target of 100, I need to deliver 120. That's the rule of 120. And I build incentives, performance matrix, the culture of the organization to deliver those 120 performance. So I think these are some takeaways. I may have taken time to answer your question, but these were the few thoughts.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for your valuable insight. I believe it has been really rewarding for all of us. Thank you so much. Abhijit, I will hand it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ronak. And Abhijit is, I think, offline.
You,
so yeah. So thank you, Ronak, and thank you, Sanjay sir, for this insight. Now I would like Manthan Mehta to take it forward with his questions, and let's see what new things we learn from Mr. Sanjay sir.
Thank you so much, Vishal bhai, and thank you so much, Sanjay sir, for the wonderful insights. Sir, my question is regarding, as in what, with the experience that you have, where do you see the real estate market, both commercial and residential, in the coming 5 years? And especially, how will the current pandemic amplified with the second wave will be affecting it? Thank you.
Let me quickly stop sharing this first. Okay. Sorry, if somebody can just remove this. Yeah. It's already removed. Thank you. First of all, let me give an overview, a macro level overview of markets. I call it a four-wheel drive. Why I call it a four-wheel drive is because you have office, residential as the front two wheel, and then you have the shopping center, retail, stroke, and new sectors or alternate assets, which are called industrial warehousing these days, and data centers and co-work, co-living, student housing, senior living. You can put them as a bucket as alternate assets. So these are four-wheel drive for the real estate sector. I believe in 2019, we all witnessed the highest ever office demand in the country. And that was 49 million square feet. At the beginning of pandemic in April 2020, most of us felt work from home, demand will be literally zero. And one of the IT companies came out with a publication, 75% of the people going forward will work from home. there was almost like a panic. But I want to share that despite that panic, despite only 4% occupancy in IT parks, we had 98% to 100% rent collection, at least amongst institutional landowners, stroke developers. 100%. Not only because of legal contract that we did, but they believe that this is a temporary setback. Second aspect, the new demand, the incremental demand, despite pessimism, was 26 million square feet net absorption, which basically meant incremental office demand during pandemic, when corporates were not going to office, but paying 100% rent, took additional 26 million square feet. Now, I want to decipher this myth. The demand for real estate by business will come down. So if you needed 10,000 square feet for 100 people, you need 5,000 square feet for the purpose of simplicity of this group today. However, when new companies and new sectors come, like Amazon did not exist in India 10 years ago. Now they have 12 million square feet portfolio in India, or maybe more. IKEA has come in, Walmart has come in, many more e-commerce companies. Apple was not in India. Today they are in India. So you will see, despite business requirement for office coming down, but the office sector will grow. And I believe after a sluggish 2-year demand for office, we will bounce back to 30-35 million square feet absorption every year. If not 49, which happened in 2019, it was the highest, but 30-35 was the average over last 2 decades. And the reason for it is the dollar rupee situation. We still have a cost arbitrage, talent pool, the leading organizations of the world, irrespective of who gets a contract or BPO, they all set up their centers in India. Not only do we have low-cost labor, but we also have managers and leaders managing the businesses. That's why if you pick up the top IT companies, you will see some of the Indians, as the global CEOs or chairmen. So it's very obvious, it's the writing on the wall. So office demand, in my opinion, is sustainable for next 10 years at least. Even if the SEZ benefits have been taken away, because the corporate tax are down, we are still going to see good business. Pandemic will be a temporary setback. Now, the setback of office has been, like Rajanji and Ashokji said, on home market is positive. So we don't need to deliberate too much on this. We all have looked at the ceilings of our home for last 15 months. We all know that balconies are important. We all know that the park in the residential complex is extremely important. We all hope the gym is bigger next time in our societies. We all hope that the buildings are not only green, but there is an element of wellness. The air quality that I breathe is better. My lungs are serviced. My kidneys and other organs of the bodies don't get compromised. I eat organic food. All that realization has happened. I think the biggest tipping point in the real estate sector, if you go back and see my commentary 3 years ago, I think Niranjanji, Khushru Jijina, and myself were on an interview with Manisha Natarajan on CNBC, and they had asked, what do we need? And we asked 2 things. Reduce the cost of capital. We don't need incentives. We don't need any, harboring or benefits. Make our cost of capital as 2-3%. Instead of you paying double digits We may be paying single digits at startups because our credentials are high, and access to capital is good. But let's take the worst case scenario. Even today, as a credible developer, you still pay 9 to 10%, or with NBFCs 14 to 18%. It's ridiculous. We cannot do this. We cannot run this business. So, and if the government is going to take 2 to 3 years to give our approvals, we will never make money. So I believe that has helped, and the lowest EMI on the housing, demand will bounce and we will do well in residential. I think the GST implementation has helped the warehousing logistics. 19 million square feet demand on an per annum basis, provided the warehousing development companies are able to churn that much. And the migration from old, illegally constructed warehouses to more high quality, high grade, legit warehousing, that migration will ensure demand for next 10 years or more. I think the alternate space is a very interesting opportunity for young leaders to monetize going forward. And if you can develop your first mover advantage and expertise, you can either have a 4-wheel drive in the real estate sector, or you can make a front engine or a back engine of the automobile and drive growth of your real estate development company. I hope I answered.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Manthan, and thank you, sir, for this. Sanjay sir, just to add on to what Ronak had asked question, do we have any case study where you can actually present something on the marketing strategies and this thing, what you had put across?
No, it's a very good point, and I would like to just portray it very quickly.
Yes, sir.
The slide, these are just talking points like we discussed. So you know, we last spoke about transformational outcome or really strategic high level performance. I would like to give an example from my consulting days and development experience recently. So let's give you an example of consulting space. What do I mean transformational? I was advising a corporate who wanted to take 30,000 square feet of space and also had a real estate fund. They called me and said, Sanjay, at 11,000 rupees per square feet, we're getting a property, few floors in Lower Parel. Can you give me better price and better quality? And I went to the board. There was no presentation. I listed all the buildings and I said, these 3 buildings are the best in quality, meet your requirement. I will buy at 15,500 rupees per square feet, which you may think is higher than 11,000 that you're buying. But the strategic advice that I give you is, can you combine your real estate fund and buy 1 lakh square feet building? They spent some time, they agreed, but he said, I will be able to rent out the balance space, but cost is still 15,500. I said, no. That's where the strategy 2 kicks in. And I said, at that point of time, the IT policy provided that banking and financial services firm, if they have a commercial space, they can build 2.6 FSI and build more. So the brainwave clicked. They took my decision and advice. We purchased 1 lakh square feet building. After structural report, we built 2.5 lakh square feet building. The average price was 10,000 rupees per square feet. So the takeaway is, you need to think something extremely transformational and strategic, which changes the goalpost and achieves the business goal in a very innovative, and you use your knowledge and expertise as a developer, as a professional, and the insight of the market, and marry the two to deliver a transformational outcome. So that's one case study that I want to give it to you. The second case study I want to give you is about a character. It's about you as an individual. By the way, it is my first office leasing, which I did back in 96 in CBRE. And what was this leasing? I'll share with you. I called Amway, an American organization. I got to know that they need office space. They were in Saket in Delhi. They wanted to move to South Delhi. I called the gentleman on the other side, Mr. Arun Khanna. I still remember his name and I still have his number. I am still in touch with him. Said, Sanjay, very unfortunate. Right now, as we speak, I'm actually going to Kailash Colony to sign the lease agreement as a LOI to begin with. So thank you for calling. And I thanked him. I put the phone down and I was telling myself, I'm late. However, the optimism in me and hope, and I don't want to lose the opportunity, pushed me to call him back. And this is very funny. I called him back. I said, sir, you're in Saket and you're going to Kailash Colony. Would you be passing by this road? He said, yes. And I said, if you don't mind, when you're at the junction and if you roll down your window, if you look on the right-hand side of your journey, you will see a building. That is what I had in mind to propose to you, but I'll leave it to you. So he started laughing. He said, Sanjay, I just told you, we're actually going to sign the LOI. So it's too late, but thank you for calling. After 10 minutes, I get a call. He said, Sanjay, my boss tells me, can you just go inside and see a quick look? We're not promising. I said, of course. And I arranged inspection. And I drove from Connaught Place to Kailash Colony like a Formula One car driver at that point of time in my Maruti van and made it in 15 minutes while they were inspecting. They decided to take that property. They needed 15,000. I gave them the entire building of 30,000 square feet and they signed the lease agreement with me 2 months later. What is the takeaway? The takeaway is, if you believe that you have understood the problem, and if you believe that you have a solution, all you need is to be persistent in your goal. Don't give up. The point that I made, that once you make up your mind, you can't cut short that goal. You can't give up halfway. You have to pursue it. Maybe the rule of 120 will drive you. And that's important. That's something which I want to give. Third case study very quickly is what I want to say is the bridge of trust. I nearly sold a building to an investor for 400 crores 15 years ago. That deal fell through. He decided not to buy. I was disappointed. There was a wedding in the family in Kanpur. I took a flight, went to attend the wedding. There we had a candid conversation. And I said, by the way, the property that you did not buy went to this investor. And they're extremely happy. And he said, it's my bad. I should have taken your advice. I should have bought it. I said, no, opportunities will keep coming, not to have a problem. But there will always be some. So we had a very candid discussion, and it was nearly 2 years of relationship. I was continuously pursuing that relationship. I didn't give up. The same gentleman agreed to invest 300 crores in Bangalore with me in buying land at Brookfield. The transaction was almost done. The markets changed and there was an oversupply of office buildings. I called him back and I said, the rental assumptions that I gave you during my advice, because there is oversupply in Whitefield, I think the rents will be under pressure and therefore this land will be too expensive. He said, what are you saying? I said, I don't think you should buy the land. And he was disturbed because he had appointed lawyers, he was committed. He said, which consultant bloody tries not to buy land? Because I get paid for closing a deal. I would lose money. I said, but I don't want to be held responsible for your losses later. I crossed that bridge of trust instantly. And next 2,000 crores went through me in all his investments. So that's one example of a case study that I want to give. In each of these points that I made in 3 case studies that I presented, the point was the focus. You need to be extremely clear of what you want. You need to act, which I've said it abundantly through all this. You need to demonstrate. You have to walk the talk. You can't just speak and not act. And your end goal of all of this is not money. Gains, you should never measure gains as money. Money is important for business. Profitability is important to make the business efficient. But your gains is never that. Your gain is, are you relevant in future? That is your gain. Is your business built to sustain the shocks of pandemic? Is your business can absorb shocks of market dynamics and fluctuations and ups and downs? The old values of entrepreneurs used to be based on these foundations. So I wanted to summarize that in a very simple, that your gains are not economic. Your gains are your relevance and your future. I would rest my case with this.
So thank you so much for so much insight that you have provided. I would now request our committee members if they have any questions to put forward. And if there are no more questions, then I would request Mr. Hitesh Thakkar to give a vote of thanks.
Thank you for the opportunity. I've exerted myself. I hope I've not taken too much of your time, but I spoke from my heart. Whatever it came, I just said it out. So appreciate the opportunity to all of you.
Sanjay ji, can I come in just for a moment?
Ji, Rajesh.
Really inspiring and especially for youngsters. But itna acha bola aapne ki I feel like worshipping you.
No, please.
The point is,
like I said, Rajesh, this is a summation of what I have learned from all of you.
Oh, these are the examples which we all and especially the youngsters need to follow and grow in their life. But isliye ki aapko nazar na lage, so what are the negative points which you think you should overcome even at this stage?
No, it's a very good point. To run a disciplined business, when I took over my current role at Tata's, one of the decisions that I had to make was we can't be everywhere. I know Tata is a big brand. We can be a global organization, but real estate business is governed by local jurisdiction. And so I had to go through a strategy of consolidation and exit relationship. I generally believe in building relationship. I don't believe in giving up relationship. So this was the most difficult challenge for me when I called my partners and I said, I may not be able to do this development, but I respect you. We would like to give this land back to you so that you can go ahead and develop. And in most cases, whatever money I had invested as a company in infrastructure, suppose if you have 100 acres, you build infrastructure for 100 acres, but you developed only 20 acres. We with our blessings and good intent, we gave it to our partners. We didn't want them to be compromised, but it was a heartbreaking to let go of such relationships. But the way I see it, it may be a current situation on the ground, but each of those my partners want to work with me today, if not the same property, some other opportunity. So that's something which to me was a challenge. I think when you contract and expand, you go through a lot of changes. And we all know change is constant. But changes in India were not received so well. What do I mean by that? One, the youngsters were taking their jobs for granted, right? And we have seen in the West, jobs come and go. Nothing is certain. But in India, there was a time 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and I was a part of it. We wanted to see our Form 16 salary curve at minimum 20% increase per annum. Minimum. And if I'm not getting 20, I would leave and join another organization at 30, 40% increase. So this generation which came didn't know the times that I went through when the jobs were difficult to come by and we had to fight and demonstrate. So I felt when the downturn happened in the sector and the pandemic, there was so many interactions of pains that a lot of individuals went through. That was really heartbreaking for me. So I think, but you know, when somebody goes through the pain, it affects you. But I know that it is temporary. It will be recovered. So I didn't want them to be disappointed. So what we did with a lot of our people, we engaged consultants, we placed them. I personally called. So when you go through these changes, you need to see with what intent can you give it back, you know. So that is really one. And I think if there's anything else that I hope I've answered. I mean,
yeah. Thank you very much. I think in a nutshell, what you have told our youngsters is that don't go for money, don't go for fame, go for excellence in whatever you do, generate trust, confidence, and with integrity.
And I'm telling you, if you have all this, money that will come to you will be 2 times of your expectations. I'm not joking. I'm absolutely not joking. If you deliver excellence, integrity, values, and goodness and build an institute, you will get tired of receiving money. You will be burdened with money. Guaranteeing you on that. Yeah.
Thank you. That's so inspiring. Over to you, Hitesh ji.
Yes. Sanjay ji, thank you very much. And as usual, we are not satisfied with the timings and due to paucity of time, we couldn't hear you much. But yes, always it's like a Dil Mange More.
No, my pleasure. Really enjoyed it.
And it was a wonderful journey with you. Like you made the presentation of Tata Legacy and your journey from your previous employment to as a CEO of Tata and everything. It's great learning for the youngsters and the next gen over here. And you mentioned about ethics, moral, trust, and money comes to last. So that's the perfect way of doing business in real estate. Unless and until you don't have these 3 pillars, you won't stand up.
Yeah.
Plus, as you answered, you have taken us through the journey of real estate scenario in pandemic. What is the demand and supply in current scenario? What is the future for commercial, housing, retail, industrial, and warehousing? That insights were too good and too informative for us. the key point which you have hit is that the four-wheel drive, which no one will forget. It's like relating to an automobile, and basically Tata is from the automobile background. So you have correlated the Tata Motors and Tata Housing. I would like to thank our leaders, industry leaders, Niranjan sir, Rajan bhai, and Ashok bhai for organizing such an informative seminar with the industry experts. Yes, and the next gen team, Jay, Ronak, Manthan, Vishal. Yes, we should take up this ahead, and literally this was a small session, and it wasn't flavor, but the whole platter is still awaited. Thank you very much, Sanjay sir.
Thank you so much. I'm so grateful.
Yes, sir.
I wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.